You've seen them, even if you didn't notice. Windows below the street, doors half swallowed by the earth. They whisper of something older, something deeper. Did we build over ruins, or forget they were ruins at all? Asterisk, you walk through your neighborhood, just as you've done so many times. The breeze is light, the air still settling into the hush of evening. You pass brick buildings and sidewalks, glancing at the storefronts and porches. Your thoughts slow and quiet now, but tonight you notice something, a door half buried in stone. Not decorative, not forgotten, just out of place. A window peeks from beneath the sidewalk, its glass dusty and staring up from the dirt. And you wonder, why would anyone build a window underground? Why would a door lead nowhere? You pause. You've seen these before, haven't you? In old parts of town, in photos from faraway cities, grand buildings with windows too low, staircases that descend into entrances that should have been on level ground. And yet, there they are, hidden beneath layers of earth, tucked into the skin of cities that pretend nothing strange has ever happened. The world around you doesn't explain it. No plaques, no history signs, no curious stories passed down, just silence, as if these buried doorways were always like this, as if no one ever asked why. You feel the ground beneath you more clearly now. What lies just below the pavement? Layers of time, perhaps. Dust and stone, yes, but maybe also stories. Cities swallowed not by catastrophe, but by time and forgetting, or by something else. The thought doesn't frighten you. It quiets you, like the hush of snowfall on an old rooftop, like walking into a library at midnight. You don't need answers yet. You only need to see. Perhaps buildings are like trees, growing up and being buried all at once. Perhaps history builds on itself, not like a straight road, but like a spiral staircase, where the steps above do not always remember the ones below. You run your fingers along the bricks. Some feel older than others. Some seem newer, but cover what came before, like a patch sewn into fabric without a pattern. Architecture becomes a whisper, a suggestion, a pause in the story that no one finishes reading. And in that pause, a question forms. Did we bury something, or did something bury us? A door does not lose its purpose simply because it no longer opens. A window still sees the sky, even through soil. You look again at the half-buried frame, the outline of forgotten entry. And in this small, strange silence, you feel a pull, not toward fear, but wonder, because sometimes the most mysterious truths are not locked behind doors. They are doors half-buried, waiting, and if the door is waiting, what might be waiting behind it? Asterisk, mud does not destroy. It preserves in silence. The earth has its own memory, layers of quiet truth, but we forget, we pave, we rewrite. What lies beneath our feet may be older than our stories. Asterisk, you stand still now, listening, not to voices or footsteps, but to the hum beneath your feet. The soil is quiet, yes, but not empty. Beneath every stone path, beneath every layer of sidewalk and street, there is a memory, soft, heavy, and wet. Mud, soil, sediment, time, thickened into weight. You may think of mud as mess, as something to wash away, but the earth knows better. Mud is a kind of memory, a slow-moving script written in minerals and silence. It doesn't shout, but it doesn't forget. You close your eyes, and for a moment, Imagine the world just after a great storm. The streets silent, the buildings dark, the ground a deep, endless brown. Cities swallowed overnight, not by fire or war, but by water and silt, by weight, not destroyed, just hidden, because mud does not erase, it preserves. It wraps around, bricks like hands cupping an old photograph. It presses into windows like breath against glass. And when it settles, it leaves behind a kind of time capsule, not just of what happened, but of what was paused. Archaeologists dig through layers of earth and find cups still full, books still bound, footsteps still frozen in motion, whole rooms, whole streets, perfectly still, perfectly buried, not lost, just sleeping. But what if no one comes to dig? What if we build on top instead? You picture it now, a civilization covered by inches, then feet, then years. A new city built atop the old, forgetting the foundation beneath it. No tombstone, no marker, just time pressed into silence. And then one day, a person like you walks past a half-buried window and wonders, just for a moment, why is that there? That is how memory begins again. A question, a pause, a presence. Because while we forget, the earth does not. Every flood leaves its mark. Every layer of mud tells a story, whether we choose to read it or not. Maybe that's what the world is doing, remembering for us. Holding the chapters we've stopped reading, keeping them safe, until someone notices the outline of a door where there should be none. You open your eyes and look down at the ground again. It feels different now, not just a place to walk, but a place that holds something. Something soft and ancient and still listening. The wind shifts slightly. The ground does not move. But now you wonder what it might say if it did, because maybe forgetting isn't permanent. Maybe memory just sinks for a while until someone is quiet enough to feel it rise again. Asterisk, they called it Tartaria, vast, elegant, symmetrical, a civilization of beauty and mystery. But where is it now? Why do we never speak of it? Was it fiction, or did we forget too well? Asterisk, you sit now, letting the thoughts settle like dust. You think of the buildings, those with arched windows, buried beneath the earth, their beauty half swallowed by time. But now another thought rises, quiet but persistent. What if it wasn't just the buildings? What if it was an entire world? There are whispers, not loud ones, but old ones. They speak of an empire called Tartaria, not in textbooks, not in history classes, but in faded maps, in crumbling blueprints, in symbols carved where no name remains. They say it stretched across continents, vast and cold, elegant and orderly. Domes that shimmered, towers too intricate for the tools we claim they had. They say the architecture was too perfect to be random, too mathematical, too intentional, as if built by minds that saw the world differently, not with conquest, but with symmetry, and yet we are told it never existed. The official stories call it a mistake, a legend, a misreading of cartographers, a misprint, a myth. But myths, you've come to learn, are only stories waiting for evidence. And silence is not the same as proof. You picture Tartaria now, not as a name, but as a feeling of balance, of beauty, of something lost, not in fire, but in paperwork. Buried not beneath mud alone, but beneath rewrites, edits, revisions. A whole chapter torn from the book of time. You wonder, why would such a place vanish? Who decides which histories remain and which dissolve into rumor. Is forgetting something we do, or something that is done to us? The empire, if it was real, left behind no battles, no borders we recognize, but it left behind patterns in bricks, in domes, in street grids, too aligned to be accidental. And as you sit in stillness, you feel it, not certainty, but a question beginning to bloom. Not fear, but fascination, because maybe we didn't lose Tartaria. Maybe it was hidden in plain sight, layered beneath our modern cities, like the faint outline of an older dream, folded into basements, chimneys, spires we never thought to question. An empire not erased by violence, but by time, and the silence of those who came after. And so you wonder, if Tartaria once was, where did it go? And if it never was, why do the traces remain? Old maps tell different stories. Rivers that vanished, cities we lost. Borders shift not only by war, but by silence. You begin to question, who gets to decide what exists? And what if we once lived in a world we no longer recognize? You unfold the old map carefully, as though it might tear beneath the weight of all it remembers. The paper is yellowed, curled at the edges, lines drawn by hands long stilled. But the lines, they don't match the world, you know. There are mountains where none should be, cities marked in neat script, yet nowhere to be found now. Coastlines stretch wider, rivers curve differently. It's familiar, but off, like a dream you wake from remembering only shadows of what was. You've been taught that maps are facts, that they measure, chart, and label what is. But tonight, you begin to wonder, what if maps are beliefs? What if they show not just where things are, but how someone once saw them? You trace your finger along the edges of this forgotten world, a place called Tartaria, printed where no country stands today. It was once there, on paper, recognized, drawn, named. Now it's nowhere. Removed maps change. You realize, not just because the earth shifts, but because people do. And memory is soft clay in the hands of those who write history. Borders can be erased with ink. Cities can vanish by omission. Mountains can flatten when no one speaks their names again, perhaps. The world didn't change as much as we think. Perhaps we just stopped drawing the parts we no longer understood. You think of the explorers, standing on quiet shores, sketching coastlines into shape, their hands unsure, their eyes chasing horizons. What they saw and what they believed. They saw became reality for generations, and now you're left with the puzzle. Were they wrong? Or are we simply looking from too far above? You gently fold the map again, not because it is false, but because it holds a truth no longer accepted. Maps are not to tools, they are choices. And in every choice, something is included and something else forgotten. The world has not always looked like the globe on your classroom wall. It has been redrawn, renamed, and reimagined to fit what we want to believe. Tonight, you ask yourself quietly, if a place is no longer mapped, does that mean it never was? And if one empire can vanish so easily from our paper skies, what else have we let disappear? Some truths are not erased, they're simply not repeated. Stories fade, not from falseness, but from silence. You begin to see that memory is not just held in books. It lives in what we're told to remember and what we're told to forget. There is something haunting about a blank space, A stretch of silence where a name used to be. A forgotten corner of history where no questions are asked anymore. You sit with this now, the maps, the buildings, the layers of earth, and you feel a quiet shift, not in the ground, but in your thinking. What if truth isn't a monument? What if it's something more fragile, something that needs to be told again and again, or it begins to vanish? You remember how books are passed down, how stories are retold at firesides, how myths become memories, not because they are proven, but because they are repeated. So then, what happens when a story stops being told? Does it become untrue? You look back at Tartaria, great, silent name, erased from maps, ignored in textbooks, its architecture left to crumble under modern feet, not disproven, just not mentioned. And slowly, you begin to realize truth doesn't need to be deleted. It only needs to be replaced by noise, you see. It in the buildings, too, the ones too old to be young, to advance, to be ancient, with their perfect arches, copper domes, and empty towers. We pass by them daily without asking. They're just old, we say. But what if they're not just old? What if they are evidence, quiet, towering, half-buried evidence of a story we no longer tell? Sometimes forgetting isn't forgetting. It's choosing not to remember. You begin to wonder, who decides which truths are whispered through the generations, and which are left behind like fading footprints in the dust? History isn't a single book. It's a library, and some shelves are locked. You imagine now that the ink of truth can fade, not because it was false, but because someone stopped tracing over it. You wonder how many stories lie just beneath the surface, under paint, under policies, under layers of silence built up like walls around memory. And you know, it's not about proving anything tonight, not about shouting for answers. It's about sitting with the quiet questions, letting them echo in your breath, letting them drift through the stillness like paper caught in wind, and trusting that some truths don't need to be loud to still be real.